I always talk about success and the difference that you are making in terms of, there are three ways to look at it, okay? If you have an intervention at point A, yeah, you have to ask yourself, before point A, what was the situation? And after the intervention, what happened? 2, you have to say, okay, since point A going forward, what changes have happened as a result of that intervention? And 3, if we took out the intervention point A, what would the situation be? That is how, in evaluation science, that's how we measure impact. Before and after, okay? Over time, the trend, or you do simulation, you take out that intervention, and you try and see what the situation will be without the intervention. So I hope you are following me. If you use those 3 approaches, the UN has fulfilled its purpose. And I will give you reasons why. But I have to start from the point that my colleague, senior colleague Chris made. The United Nations is not the civil servants that work for the United Nations, like myself. I'm just an international civil servant. The United Nations is the member states. Turkey, one of the founding members, and the 192 or 193 other countries. Those are the United Nations. The United Nations has different organs, including the Security Council, the General Assembly, the Economic and Social Council, and so on. But essentially, the United Nations is only as powerful and as effective as its member states support it, allow it, resource it to be. And whenever the member states act with a unity of purpose, the United Nations is effective. The United Nations is less effective when there are geopolitical divisions and there is gridlock and we can't find consensus. Then the United Nations cannot move forward. A recent example is after the Ukraine-Russian war broke out, one of the immediate consequences was the disruption to global food supply and food and fertilizer supply chains that immediately triggered a food price inflation crisis, which for many low-income and developing countries was actually massive in terms of the devastation that it wreaked on poor households, communities, and businesses. And what happened? Turkey came together, under the leadership of Turkey came together with the United Nations, mediated between Ukraine and Russia, and we were able to restart the supply of fertilizers and essential cereals to the world market through the Black Sea Grain Initiative. How many of you know about the Black Sea Grain Initiative? It was hosted in Istanbul, yeah? And because of that, the prices of food started going down everywhere in the world. And those who were going to become poorer as a result of food poverty, escaped from poverty. That example of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, what it tells you is that when we come together as countries and allow the United Nations to be a platform for forging common solutions to shared problems, we work. We are very effective. Secondly, this year the United Nations will be 81 years old, yes?
Yes.
And since the United Nations was primarily created, to put it crudely, to prevent the occurrence of a third world war. And however you look at it, we have not had in 81 years another world war. 3, when you look at many things we take for granted, they work because the United Nations is a custodian of agreed protocols and rules. So when you look at maritime trade, the reason you can thousands of ships can float around the sea today is because there are some rules and protocols that guide maritime trade, and is managed on behalf of the whole world by the World Maritime Organization, which is a part of the United Nations. The fact that you can have thousands of planes flying in the sky is because there are protocols that guide civil aviation, and again, a United Nations agency is responsible for holding those protocols together. The International Civil Aviation Organization, and so on and so forth. When it comes to pandemics, as we learned with COVID, and there will be another pandemic in future, let's not get around it. The only way you can immediately control pandemics from getting out of hand is if we come together. And there is what is called the International Health Regulations that the WHO holds and manages on behalf of all countries of the world. Therefore, if a new disease breaks out, or even an old disease reemerges, as we are seeing in DRC with Ebola, the country has an obligation under the WHO to report that a new disease has broken out, and then the rest of the world gets ready and prevents it from spreading, which is why Ebola has not gone beyond DRC today. It spread a bit into Uganda, but Uganda has controlled it, and that we no longer have Ebola in Uganda. So I'm giving you all these examples because, of course, it is easy to point to the things that are not working, like the failure, so-called failure of the United Nations on the Palestinian issue, on the Iran conflict, on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. But what I ask of all of you is for a balanced view. Always remember those things that are working that we take for granted and put it side by side with the things that are not working. But the point I'm making is, whenever the United Nations has failed, it is because the member states have refused to come together to act with a unity of purpose and to play by the rules that they themselves agreed to when they set up the United Nations. So when a member of the Security Council, like Russia, goes on to attack another member state, that is breaking the rules that those who formed the United Nations, including Turkey, that was a founding member, agreed to at the beginning. So anytime, my dear friends, the United Nations is failing, look closely. You will find that it is because the member states do not have a unity of purpose and have not agreed. But on most things that we take for granted, the United Nations is working. The fact that we are now taking seriously the climate crisis and mobilizing efforts to address the impact of climate change is partly due to the leadership of the United Nations. So I rest my case. Thank you.
I like your question, and my answer to you is yes, 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 yes. Let me start with that. My second point would be a question to all of you. Can you imagine the world without the United Nations? Just think about it. When you're sleeping, having your coffee, or what? In 1944, when after the 1945, after the end of the war, when they met in San Francisco, it was countries that met. And here I'm glad that my brother has spoken from the perspective of UN staff member. Let me talk now as a member state. In early 1990, I was a very young diplomat based in New York, observing, the flag in front of you so you can say any nonsense you want to say, and you get away with it. So when they went there, these were countries, member states who went, and they signed an agreement, which today we call the Charter. That agreement is supposed to to establish international peace and security. The Third World War that he's talking about. Now, when they finished, they realized that, we have this beautiful charter. Who's going to implement it? We have to find someone to implement it, because the president of Nigeria is not going to be sitting in San Francisco or New York to implement those things. So they decided to create what we call a secretariat. So once they created the secretariat, they decided, but somebody has to run the secretariat. They said Secretary General. Okay, so they got the Secretary General. No, the Secretary General needs to have staff. So staff were created around the Secretary General. So our initial focus was peace and security. In fact, one of the early Secretaries General died on his way to Congo at that time. Yeah. Peace and security. But as the years went on, we realized that there were crises that if we did not solve will affect peace and security. Mind you, after the Second World War, after the First World War, there were the remnants of UNICEF to deal with women and children. But then we began to also realize that, wait a minute, development affects peace and security. When people are jumping over fences to come into other countries, it's an economic and a developmental problem. So UNDP was created to solve that. Then we realized, oh my goodness, I was talking to somebody today about acid rain and the way it has affected some of your crops in this country. let's establish UNEP to deal with that issue. Then, as he said, we realized that planes have been developed. They are flying. And, there needs to be rules of the air. So ICAO was created. Then, refugee issues were created. We have UNHCR. The UN has responded to virtually every crisis that we have faced. The latest crisis that he has spoken about, which is, I'm so happy is happening in your country, in Antalya, is COP31. It's to deal with the climate issue. Let me tell you, I was in Germany a few weeks ago and London a few weeks ago. We all have this notion that hell is heat. I won't lie to you. That heat, climate is speaking to us. Climate change is already speaking to us. So to answer your question specifically, yes, the UN has actually achieved its purpose. The drawbacks are very simple. That's exactly what he explained. What happens is the Secretary General is a secretary. It's a Secretary General. So far it's only he. We haven't had a she yet. So he can only do the work that the member states ask him to do. And if member states don't ask him, or they keep fighting and there's no solution, there's nothing he can do about it. Have you ever wondered why we don't have a UN army, for instance? And when you have a UN army, it's called peacekeeping. Not all countries put their military under to solve those problems. So I am one who cannot give up hope on the UN. I cannot see a world without the UN. Why do you people even do model UN? There's a reason why you do model UN. Not because of the certificates you're going to get. Deep down in your conscience, you do believe this thing is not just a glamorous thing. There's a meaning to it. So look at the UN from a meaningful perspective, what it has achieved in many countries. Even in your own country, look at how much you have advanced. Today, I don't understand. I see Turkey as a first world. There's nothing you lack. I've been to your hospitals. I've been to what. It's amazing what you have today. And that's because of peace around the region and in your own country. So I'm answering your question. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answer. It was really insightful, and thank you again. Now, this room is full of young people from Turkey and from all around the world who is working and studying on different things, different areas, hoping one day to serve their country and all around the world and people who need their help. From everything you've learned from your career and experiences in international organizations and public service, what would you tell to someone standing where we are right now?
Let my elder brother start. He's older than me.
Thank you. It's a very interesting question, which I am sure some of you are grappling, even in your own families. The parents who are telling you you're only worth something when you are a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. And then, by the way, I have never seen so many women engineers in any one place than I have seen in Turkey. Congratulations. It is impressive. Because sometimes I even ask, they don't teach any other subject in your universities. It is impressive. But to address your question specifically, let's start from a career. This is the way I look at a career. Okay? You leave, you are in your office, 8 or 9 o'clock? And then you're back in your office you're back at home 5 or something o'clock. Okay, you finish the office. You're home. Now, compare that to a spouse, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. You don't like them. You leave them, you go to the office, you come back and they are still at home there, and you don't like them. Why do you want such a situation? Study that thing that when you wake up in the morning, you wake up with energy to go and do. That is how you're going to be innovative. My generation, we had no choice. You're either a lawyer, an engineer, or medical doctor, or you get a PhD. That's the only choices we had. Well, I was sent to medical school, but I ended up becoming a lawyer. But your generation, you have so much opportunity to be innovative. What you have put here today, just you by yourselves alone, is incredibly innovative. Why? Because it's coming from the heart. So my response is fairly simple. I cannot tell you this is what you have to study. Rather, I have to ask you, what do you want to study? If you don't know what you want to study, then I can explain to you the different faculties that exist. So you have to think of yourself. What I normally tell my students is that, listen, think of yourself 15 years from now. How do you want to see yourself? Do you want to see yourself in a white robe? Do you want to see yourself in a court? Do you want to see yourself with a hard hat on, climbing scaffolders? How do you want to see yourself? That is how you determine. But at the end of the day, wake up to something that gives you happiness when you're going to sleep. But if you're going to sleep and you're very sad that you're going to wake up the next morning, you are in the wrong profession and you're not good for any employer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, although all this opportunity that we hold, I'm sure that we have a lot of things to learn from experienced guests like you, because we need a pathway to follow, and our pathway is experienced guests like you. So thank you so much again.
Let me build on the wisdom of my brother. All of you in this hall, I take it that you have a passion for diplomacy, for international service, for contributing in one way or the other to making the world a better place. That's my starting point, that you have that interest, all of you in this hall. Now, if you have that interest, that's the foundation. The second one is that what you are doing here will then be the next building block, which is that you have to develop a real sense of being a global citizen. And being a global citizen does not mean that you will not be a patriotic citizen of Turkey. So you have to constantly be able to think global and act effectively locally. Because many of the challenges that we face today and will face in the world to come will be, for lack of a better word, will be international in nature, will be global in nature. Because the world is actually, in spite of everything happening, especially at the economic level and in terms of communications, the world is becoming more interconnected and more interdependent. And so you will always need skill sets that will help us address shared problems, shared challenges through common approaches. Now, if you want to pursue a career in international development, in diplomacy, in foreign service, and so on, it doesn't really matter what you study. There are thousands of medical doctors and engineers in the UN, some of them working on things that have nothing to do with engineering. But they have in their heart, a desire to make the world a better place. And they see themselves as global citizens. So, for me, if you look at my own career, I would say build a track record, no matter what your discipline or your area of specialization is. Even if you're an AI expert, be the best in AI. If you're an economist, try to be the best in economics. Build a track record. Build a portfolio of achievement. I don't think, it's easy to get into the UN fresh from school. It's very, very difficult. Except you want to come in as a volunteer or as an intern. And that's one way. Some people come in through internship. And I've advised my friends in government that Turkey needs to have a very strong program of supporting UN volunteer scheme, of supporting junior professional programs, of supporting projects through which young Turkish citizens can be placed at the entry level into the UN, and then they grow their careers. That is the way countries like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and even now China, that is why you are seeing more and more of them in the UN. They created schemes that enable their citizens to enter the UN at the entry level. But if you want to enter as a professional, first of all, build a track record of achievements. And then you can go into different areas, from urban planning to nuclear, to agriculture, to health, to women, to peace, conflict prevention. The UN has enough. I mean, the things that we do, even for maritime engineers, for AI experts, the global challenges that we face require skills and knowledge from all disciplines. Because more and more of the challenges that we face are interdisciplinary in nature. So even in health, my background is in public health. We then find that sometimes we need specialists in communication to be able to address risk awareness, risk behavior, and so on. In agriculture, you'll find that if you don't have a good sense of finance, you cannot possibly help with improving agricultural productivity in low-income countries and so on. So there is enough skills. So there is enough space, no matter what your discipline is. So if you want to come in, perhaps at the middle level, I would say start by doing very well in your chosen field in your career. Build a portfolio of achievement, and then you come in, of course, at a level where you can put all that you have acquired to help solve global problems. But I'm happy to talk to people individually as well if you need some advice. There is no one single way of entering the UN. But what I think works best is be known for something. Do solid work. Be consistent. And somebody will notice you. And then you'll be able to start an international career. But if you are wishy-washy, just floating by, it's very difficult to break into the UN. I must tell you the truth. It's very, very difficult. Even the World Banks of this world, the European Union and so on, and all these international organizations. But once you are very solid in what you do, your reputation and your portfolio of achievements will open doors for you. Thank you.
Let me add that to what he's just said, that we are extremely cognizant of the fact that for some people, it's about getting a job that pays very well. We're not discounting that. If that is what is of interest to you, by all means, follow it. We're not saying go ride a bike because that's your passion and forget it. If you want to work for Goldman Sachs, if you want to work for Wall Street, if that is what your heart desires, we are pragmatic that there are bills to be paid. Pay those bills. Passion is not going to pay bills for you. That is going to give you happiness. Just wanted to add that to it. Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Ahonsi and Mr. Mensah, for attention, patience, and your answers. Indeed, LifePath inspires a lot of us here today. Also, we want to thank all the participants for their attention and patience as well. Thank you all again. Our panel ends here, and see you all at the Symphony Orchestra. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.